right. If I don't sound the same as usual, though, I think I got my voice back. It is because the Niners sent us through a roller coaster ride of a football game tonight, and they beat the Detroit Lions 34-31 to head to Las Vegas and the Super Bowl. And Rod is here. I think Rod and I kind of feel the same way about this game. But before we even get there was a dilemma for 49er fans today, which was we didn't want to put ourselves in the Super Bowl quite yet, but there was a Kansas City and Baltimore Ravens game going on. Two teams that we have history with in the big game. Who were you actually rooting for in this game, knowing that if the Niners also won, this would be their foe in the Super Bowl?
Here's the thing. I'm sorry, 49er fans, but I have to admit it. I'm a bit of a Lamar stan. And I knew after the regular season he had, the pressure was on him to perform in this game because, Mahomes is a made guy. Six AFC championships in 6 seasons, 2 MVPs, 3 first team All Pros. I mean, he's got a Hall of Fame resume after 6 seasons. He's Sandy Koufax. If he's
Brady, right? Like he's essentially what Tom Brady was when Tom Brady was winning Super Bowls. Like he's just gonna be in the Super Bowl in the AFC.
That's it. And he is, nobody's wishing anything ill on him, but he's Sandy Koufax. If he retired tomorrow, he's a Hall of Famer in 5 years. There's no question about it. And in a world, I was listening to Peter Schrager on Simmons today, and in a world where something like that kind of statement creates some kind of, it's inflammatory. He said he posted that this week on X, and everybody was like, duh. I mean, so there's not even any argument that he is the best, that it's him and everybody else in the NFL today. Even people on Twitter who argue about everything can't argue about that. I mean, he's just undeniable. So I wanted to see Lamar do well, but Spags did an outstanding job. Their defensive coordinator, we saw last week that D'Amico had a great game plan in the first half.
Yep.
And they went in, they figured it out, and they started running those blitz beaters, and they took over. It was like they could never figure out what the hell Kansas City was doing. And whatever they thought they were doing was clearly wrong, because they kept running those deep-ass patterns out there, and they just kept, batting them down, picking them off, having 3 guys around the guys, and then, the ass head shit reared his head again with Zay Flowers and his stupid ass 15-yard penalty, and then fumbling out the ball. But that has been it was just so frustrating. And I just, that Kansas City defense is good. They are just legit good. And then Mahomes is Jordan. And I thought Travis Kelce was cooked. Yep. What the hell happened there? I thought
Taylor.
I thought he was distracted, and I thought he was cooked. I thought she was the reason he was playing bad, but
I had 2.
He looked like a Hall of Famer. He looked like a Hall of Famer.
I had 2 in the household. I had my stepdaughter doesn't know anything about football except Taylor. So she just whatever was happening with Taylor, she wanted to keep happening with Taylor. And then my stepson, because Taylor is on the other side, he was rooting for Baltimore because he's just sick of hearing about Taylor. So there was a polarization of that game. So the reason why I asked that is because I had people reaching out to me who is going to, who do the Niners want to play? Who do they not want to play? And I said, let's just take this one game at a time, because Detroit is staring at us right now. And I don't even want to think about that, because you get ahead of yourself, and Detroit comes in and puts 20 on you in the first half, then you're just thinking like, why was I even thinking like that? And that's kind of what happened.
is exactly what happened. How in the hell? It's like it was my worst fears realized. It's like, oh shit, we can't set the edge against these dudes.
Yeah.
And we can't get off blocks. So okay,
Yep.
here we go. This is where I started because you know how the 49, you know how 49er Facebook is. The minute they go down and score, we start with the Steve Wilkes sucks and this
Yeah. Yeah.
and we need to do this and we need to blitz. Why don't we blitz more? Bro, what are you talking about? We have invested all these picks and all this salary cap space on this defensive front, and we can't rush the pass and we can't get off blocks. What are you talking about, Steve Wilkes? He didn't do any of that. That is our guys. And then what just sent me through the roof is Nick Bosa is the edge is being set on Nick Bosa by wide receivers. What in the entire, excuse my language, fuck? He is supposed to send Josh Reynolds back in a box if you try to set the edge on him. It's just, our wide receivers block and they block defensive backs and they block linebackers. But when you're talking about guys like JT Watt, you're talking about Myles Garrett, you talk about Max Crosby, you talk about Nick Bosa, that guy is supposed to be that wide receiver is supposed to be a sacrificial lamb if you try to block the edge on those guys with that dude. But not only did Josh Reynolds do it, they fucking scored on the play on top of it.
Yeah.
Get out of here. What are we doing? Okay.
Let me give you my side. And don't worry, folks. We are going to get to the good parts of this game. But the way that Rod and I feel, it should sort of tell you kind of what our fandom is like, in that we kind of explained this last week. Our expectation is Super Bowl winning Super Bowls, not just getting there, not just being happy to be in the NFC Championship game, because we've been through so many NFC Championship games. They ran a graphic that said the 49ers record in the wild card game, in the divisional game, and in the Super Bowl. They have an over 500 record in all of those series, except the NFC title game, where they are not great in the NFC title game.
We've lost 11 of them.
That's means crazy. That they get there, but it also shows you how hard, even as good as they are with winning Super Bowls, how hard it is to actually get there. And so I was watching this game, and Shelvin in our Discord, Shelvin sees like my real frustration at stuff because of that expectation. I had tweeted after they went out 14-0. I typed one word in a tweet, and I said exposed. And, people were taking whatever they wanted that I meant out of that. Like I was giving up. I wasn't giving up on the game. What my fear was going into this game, and Nick Bosa kind of explained it in a comment earlier in saying, he basically said, we are the tougher team, and that's our style of football, but we expect them to X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And my thought was, I don't actually think we're the tougher team. I think it's actually the opposite, in that if we play well in the beginning and we get out ahead, we're a pile-on team. We're kind of a front-running team in that way. Mm-hmm. But when it's the opposite, when they get punched in the mouth, they haven't done anything. Mm-hmm. And so we had that game last week against the Packers, and they did actually make the comeback. Right. The frustrating thing about last week is the Packers didn't even practice. They went game, walk through. They're so beat up, and then they come into to Levi's and they start putting it on us. And so that's a bit frustrating. But what I was basically saying was, in that one-word tweet, exposed, all of my fears were coming out in the first half of this game. Because if you hadn't seen a football game and you watched the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, your thought would have been, oh, the Lions are the bigger and stronger and faster team, and they're just pushing the 49ers around. That must be what the story of this game is. The 49ers were not the tougher team in this game. They took advantage when they needed to take advantage in the second half. They made big plays. Brock was finally using his feet, something that we've been
My God,
begging him to do all season long. Now, in a lot of these games, he hasn't had to do it because they've been dominating. But in these games where they haven't played well, he's still trying to hang in that pocket. And he's so small that these defensive linemen just raise their arms up and they're tipping the ball. They're changing his tunnel and where he can throw it. And I'm just like, dude, you have some slick feet back there. Step aside, step up. And finally he was doing that. I think it was out of must, like he had to, or else, that pocket was going to collapse on him. And, that's a different problem altogether with the offensive line. But so my tweet was more so about, I actually didn't think that they were the tougher team. And I'm not sure we are going to be the tougher team heading into Kansas City. We know Andy Reid is going to have them prepared. First and foremost, they are going into that game in Las Vegas as if they are the same old Chiefs that are Super Bowl champion style teams, right? And so my worry is that if they start out flat like they have in these two games, the Chiefs are not going to look back. The Packers and the Lions look back. They're young teams. They don't have the veteran savvy. They have not been in the playoffs. And we took advantage of that. The Chiefs are not going to look back. So that is my fear. That was my fear. I'm very thankful we won this game, but people were asking me, are you happy? Are you happy? I was like, no, I'm content. But I'm guarded. I'll be happy if they win the Super Bowl. And that's just kind of the way it is with these teams that are so good. We have built, the 49ers have built this team as a couple of windows. We got a couple of windows to win this Super Bowl. And so in the Discord, we were talking about it. And I was saying, I've been reading this Steve Young and Joe Montana book. And I forgot how many times Bill Walsh pulled out Joe Montana for Steve Young in the regular season. And so in my mind, I'm going like, okay, well, Brock is throwing flutter balls. He's throwing interceptions. Even on some passes that are actually being completed, they're literally up for grabs. If he throws another pick, we may have to make a change because the only way to stay with these guys when the defense is playing so poorly is you got to score points, and we're not scoring points.
All right, man. I don't want to be negative, super negative. So we're going to be what that point you just made. We need to put a pin in that. At some point, we have to have a conversation about our quarterback room next year because you are 100% right. It was as crazy as it sounds with some of the games that Brock had. If we don't score when we do, that had to be a conversation. It had to be because we were at a point where it was like a good throw and a bad throw and a good throw and a bad throw.
When it was like he able to, if he could hang in the pocket, he had a clean pocket, he was good. If he was rushed in any way, he was throwing it too early. He was throwing it off of 1 foot. He was throwing it and ducking, and it was not good.
And, and again, that which leads to my second frustration is this pass defense of the Lions has been giving up 1,000,000 yards to everybody. Jordan Love lit him up for almost 400 yards. Dak lit him up for almost 400 yards. Baker Mayfield lit them up for like 390 last week. It took literally a Brock bouncing it off Ayuk's face mask for
the defensive back.
I was just again so frustrated that these dudes are out here to be had. Now again, there were pressure things, and I get that, but and again, we talked about Brock and him using his legs, and I understood the prudence of not unleashing that part of the game in the regular season because you just can't afford. He's so valuable to us. We can't afford. But I was on some, Apollo Creed shit today. There is no tomorrow.
Exactly. That was my point. This is my point. My point was, I don't care about Brock Purdy's feelings. I want to win the game. Like, I'm not a
Right.
Brock Purdy fan as much as I am a 49ers fan. And they have such a small window here that they don't have the opportunity to say, well, you know what? Good season. We'll run it back next year, because we don't know what next year looks like, right?
We don't. These are the good old days. We need to, if we don't get 6 with this collection of talent, I don't. And again, if we do, I think it sets up us basically kind of running it back with some tweaks next year and try to get another one. But if this team fails, that is a colossal failure. I mean,
And for the people who didn't listen to last week, Rod and I are prefacing this by saying Brock Purdy's a second-year QB.
right.
He is not 6 and 7 years into his career. So we give him that caveat of he is learning how to play in the postseason live in front of us. He's never done this before. And he's going to make mistakes. You have to give him that opportunity, being such a young quarterback. Hell, we gave those mistakes to Jimmy, and how many games did he play, right? You just knew, we were calling it like, let's get the pick out of the way so that because we know it's coming. Let's get it out of the way. Now, Brock, there are moments when he's back there, and I'm scared that the pick is coming, and we only got one, so I'm very thankful for that. But even on some of these throws that he was threading, I was like, oh my gosh,
There were at least 2 others that were picks. But again, he is a victim of his own success.
Yes.
Because I know and believe, while it seems like I'm being hard on him, it's because I believe that if he just plays his median Brock Purdy game, he is more than good enough to win a Super Bowl. Even with the fact that he's young, I believe that we can win a championship with him right now. I mean, it's not like he has to season. He just needs to play his best ball. And the fact of the matter is, the last 2 weeks he hasn't.
And look at the halves, the tale of two halves. In the first half, he had a 39 quarterback rating. By the end of the game, he had an 89 quarterback rating. So he was poor in the first half and great in the second half. How about we just be even? How about we just be average or above average in both halves, and we don't have to worry about
Don't give me these heart attacks, these mini heart attacks. Just if you you don't have to be special. We don't need, which is again is always the conversation around him. Everybody wants to throw him in with Allen and Mahomes and Jackson. Bro, he's not that dude. But the thing of it is, he doesn't have to be. We don't need him to be that. He's not being asked to be that. He is just asked to be the point guard. Get it where it needs to go. Get it out your hand. Make the right decision. If you need to throw it away, throw it away. There were several runs where he forced the ball, or he took sacks where the play was to throw the ball away. And again, that's one of those things. It's the double-edged sword. Some of what makes him who he is the fact that sometimes he can extend a play and he hangs on to the ball a little longer and he finds that guy down there, and he makes a play. But then there are other times there's always the flip side of that coin. And I think what I happen to believe is that with him, that's what that kind of discernment is what's going to come with time. Because it did with Mahomes. Mahomes, Bill Simmons was talking about this this week, is, despite his kind of gunslinger mentality when he came into the league, Mahomes never makes bad decisions anymore. He never puts the ball in harm's way. He always makes the right play. He's turned into an executive. He is a CEO now. He understands that with these dudes, this collection of dudes he's got here, trying to count on them, counting on MVS, even if he knows he can make the play, I don't know if that guy can make the play. So let's just go ahead and check it down or throw it away and live to play another day. And Brock just needs to get that discernment quicker,
And with
if that's
success,
possible.
that will come, right?
Yeah,
Because
it is.
Mahomes, he had early success, but he also had the opportunity to sit behind and watch for a season before becoming who he became. Now, Purdy sort of did too, but Purdy wasn't a number one draft pick, so
And nobody had any expectations for
no, and
Brock
so he
Purdy.
was sitting behind Trey Lance until Trey Lance got hurt, and then he's still sitting behind Jimmy until Jimmy got hurt. So he's kind of thrust into this situation. And also, there's no tape on this kid. No one knows who this guy is. Everyone knew who Pat Mahomes was when he got drafted. So a little bit of a different thing. I want to say for those of us, or for those who are watching us on YouTube, if you can hit that like button, that little thumbs up button, that will help us in our algorithm. And also, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the BSPN channel. Now, Rod and I think last week, and I actually clipped this for a YouTube video outside of the actual live feed that we did. I called it 49ers old heads because our theory was we root for Brock. Brock is not above criticism, just like any other player on this team. But just stop comparing him to Joe.
Yeah,
And
that's
and,
never good.
and you know, Joe was there, so
Never
Joe was there handing the trophy to Jed. They didn't even
Never
have
good.
Joe say anything. I was kind of wondering why don't you have Joe up there? Just give him the mic for 10 seconds, Michael Strahan, and so like in my mind, like we got Joe, we got Steve, and we know when those dudes were in the Super Bowl, they were going to deliver, and that's where you want Brock to be too. Colin Kaepernick, he was so close. Jimmy G, it was not as close, but we still had the lead pretty late in that game. The score was a little bit more than what the game really was. And now Brock can be on this list with Joe and Steve for guys who can, who can actually have Super Bowl wins underneath their belt. So that's where you kind of strive. But we don't put that on him yet. We don't give him that yet because
and that's the
it hasn't
thing.
happened.
That's the thing. I'm not that old head that says that he can never be considered in that echelon. I'm not saying
We
that at
want
all.
him to be a
But what
legend.
I'm
He is just
saying
not a
is
legend yet.
he doesn't have any pelts on the wall yet. So I mean, it's just, and I think it's crazy unfair to him to heap that level of expectation on him. Let's just let it play out. And if it turns out that he's a two-time All-Pro, first team All-Pro, and a two-time MVP and a Super Bowl MVP and a couple of championships down the road, then okay, I'm fine with having that conversation. But he didn't have any of that, and you are just anointing him as in that conversation. It's nuts. It's
Well,
nuts.
I think what
Stop.
it is also is there is so much hope in this fan base. Like you remember in 2012, was that when the what was the little slogan when they were trying to get the six? It was like Journey for Six or something like I forget. There's a better slogan than that. And I was just like, God, that sounds so corny. Like we don't have to beg and hope and plead for Quest for Six. There, Davis. Davis. By the way, shout out to Davis, Shelvin, PA, Niner fan 87. Our guy Rick, you guys are awesome, and I'm glad that we are on early enough for y'all to be live with us. But like, and then in 2019, it was like Quest for Six, and I'm like, can we just stop the Quest for Six stuff? Like, we want it to happen, but let it happen. We've been there before. We don't have to like beg for it, right? But I think that's what it's become now, because like what we mentioned is, 49ers last won a Super Bowl. I was a senior in high school, and that was a long time ago. So now we are so far from those golden years that there are people like, I'm sure Davis probably doesn't remember the 94 Super Bowl. I'm gonna guess he was alive for it, but he probably doesn't remember it. And so there are people who are just like, we need it, we want it, it's our turn, blah, 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 blah. So in that instance, just the hoping that Brock is the answer in a historically quarterback driven franchise, I can see why there is like, our prayers are answered. We got the guy. This is a great story. He's Mr. Irrelevant. He reminds us of Joe, but it's just like, let that stuff happen because we're expecting too much out of him. And like you said, I imagine Brock, not saying that Brock reads the comments, but he knows what the stories are about him. We talked about it last week. And usually the underdog QB is the beloved. Like everyone wants us to, and he's got a lot of haters out there. And so I'm sure he sees that. I'm sure he thinks, hey, I can make this play to shut up these guys. I can make this play and it'll shut up these guys. And so there's temptation for that. He's a competitor, just like anybody else. He wants to win more than even we want him to win. Shelvin is giving us the business here in the chat. He says he was in 8th grade in 1994. Shelvin making us the third man in the booth here, Shelvin.
But yeah, I'm like tired of like people calling it hate. What I think it is, it's simply a black backlash. When if I know for me and for our fan base in particular, my frustration, of course, as I've long said, is the comparisons to Montana are dumb. That bothers me. But then the other thing that bothers me is how we want to put him in the conversation of elite quarterbacks when he plays well. Perfect passer rating, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, great, best top 5 quarterback. But then when he stinks up the joint, it's like everybody has amnesia and nobody wants to hold Brock accountable. It's Kyle's fault. It's the offensive line's fault. It's his horoscope. It's the refs.
Isn't that the whole journey of a QB though?
It's
like,
but it's never his fault.
Okay,
but
but
if you just simply hold him accountable when he's bad, praise him when he's good,
yeah,
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that it's never ever his fault when it goes good. But then when it goes well, if it goes well and I say that, well, he's got 4 all-pro specialists, I'm hating because I point out the fact that we can't not make that be part of the conversation. It would be different if we had Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney and MVS that he was throwing to. We wouldn't be in the Super Bowl. I'm just gonna say that flat out. It would not be that way. He's just not that kind of player. So let's just be real about it. But like I said,
we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on.
Let's get to positive stuff.
Okay, well, now we're gonna go to the positive. But what I will say is, what I'm happy about?
Yes,
is my son who is 24.
It's the Super Bowl.
No, my son is 20. He's gonna be 23. So Brock can be his guy. Brock is 1 year older than my youngest son. And so he is pro Brock because that's his guy. He didn't have Joe
Those
Montana.
aren't his guys.
He didn't have Montana like we did. He didn't have Young like we did. So he sees Brock as his guy, and he so desperately wants Brock to succeed. So I get that part.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so
I do too.
We want Brock to succeed too.
Yeah,
that's
the
point. Okay. So the game, which started ever so poorly, it turned at halftime, and in the chat, in the Discord chat, I said I'm never gonna turn the TV off. I'm not that kind of fan. I'm gonna stick with it through thick and thin. I will be frustrated, but I'm not. I'm gonna be with this till the end of the whistle. And I said, but I really would like to see what Kyle and company do at halftime to kind of change the tone of the game. And you know what? We can blame a little bit of this on poor young Jake Moody, right? Jake Moody, the heartbeat of the game has just begun, and then he wide rights a field goal. It's like, it just puts you in this mood, right? And almost like that kind of set the tone. But at halftime, they did eventually change some stuff. You saw the pass rush get a lot better. You saw
Mm-hmm.
Eric Armstead move to the outside a little bit on certain plays,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, the defensive tackles getting blown up in this game. Hargrave, like I know we got him because he can rush the passer, but does that also mean he cannot stop the run? Like, do you have to have one or the other? Like
He
that was
has
tough.
been one of the biggest disappointments of this season. He's like been a no-show, basically. And then for a long time, I was like, maybe he's hurt. But then with both him and Chase Young, it's like, okay, maybe Chase Young, maybe the injuries have taken their toll, and he's just not the same player. But then he'll make 3 or 4 plays in a row. There was a sequence where he had like 3 plays in a row that basically ended the drive. And it's like, okay, so he can do it. So then why the hell does it only happen on like a third of the plays? And the same thing with Hargrave. He made some plays tonight, but overall, he just has been underwhelming. And then it's you can just continue to double and triple team Nick over there, because you don't have to have any regard for this dude, and he is supposed to be a game wrecker type player. But like you said, Wilkes started calling more twists. He started calling more stunts. They started to get more pressure. They started getting off blocks, and they started stopping them. Shout out to Javarius Ward. Amon St. Brown was a no-show in the second half,
Second half, yeah.
and that had a lot to do with number 7.
I think
After
what also had to do with, there's a play where he gets crunched between Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw.
Okay, yeah.
And it looked like he was going to make the catch, and those two guys hit him at exactly the same time, so he kind of got sandwiched. And I think that affected him. I didn't see any injury reports or anything, but you're talking about getting hit by 2 big linebackers, 2 big, strong, fast linebackers. And I think that was
It
part of
must
the
have,
thing with him.
because he was cooking us in the first half. It was really disgusting to watch. But the defense really stepped up in the second half. And I'm not one who am gonna say that it had a hell of a lot to do with the play calling, because I just don't believe that Steve Wilkes is a positive or a negative in that matter. I think he's just neutral. It, to me, from when I'm watching, it has everything to do with the way that we execute. If Nick Bosa, who, to be quite honest with you, hasn't done it very much this year, but if he plays like a defensive player of the year, the defense looks, because that's what this whole thing is set up for. We just spent all these draft picks, all this money on the defensive front. They are supposed to make an impact, and if they're just meh, it puts pressure on everybody. It's because this whole thing is not set up for those guys to be meh.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be dominant. And they just haven't been, and they were closer to it than they've been in a long time in the second half, and it showed.
Okay, so I'll just go through the scoring of the first half, and we'll talk mostly about the second half here. So Detroit just goes like very few plays here and scores immediately on a what was it? Was it a reverse?
A reverse for like 50 yards,
42 yards, and so I'm watching this play and I'm going like, okay, who is the one who like overcommitted and should have been able to make the play?
Defensive line can't get off blocks, and Dre Greenlaw misses a tackle.
I'm looking in the secondary because I'm looking for Jair Brown, because I'm like, okay, it's got to be something with him because he's the rook, and you always kind of look and see how he's doing. Ambry Thomas overruns the play, and he overruns it so far that he's actually in Brown's way. So he gets in the way of Brown, who is trying to come and make the play. He has to push Ambry Thomas into the right direction, but in doing that, then he's behind the play as well. So
not only didn't he do his job, he stopped somebody else from doing their job. That is awful.
And it is so, I thought Ambry Thomas actually had a pretty bad game today. And if you're looking for like, if Pat Mahomes is looking for people to pick on, he's probably looking directly in his direction. Okay, so they go touchdown. Then we miss the field goal, which I said kind of set the bad tone. They go touchdown again, and it is David Montgomery, and he is just slicing and dicing us. So it was like the easiest 14 points that it seems that have been scored on the Niners the entire time. We finally get one. We get one with McCaffrey. And then, so you're thinking, okay, we're back in this. We just need to stop. Nope, not even close to a stop, because they just go right down the field again in less than 3 minutes, 21-7. We punt, they kick a field goal, end of the half. And
At
so
that point, I'm like, they're gonna have 600 total yards on us at this point.
there was nothing in that first half that led us to believe that the Niners could stop them at any point, because they didn't. The Lions punted one time in the first half. It was touchdown, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal. Those were the 5 possessions. So there was nothing that led me to believe that this was even a thing. But second half starts, Niners get the ball first, they go field goal. And, I was in one of my moments. I was like, if Jake Moody misses this, man, he's dead to me.
Take his jersey.
I
Take his
can't even
jersey.
do it. And the other thing is Eminem was out there. Did you see pictures of Eminem?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the greatest MCs of all time. I'm comfortable saying that. Who are you flipping off, dude? You're like a 45-year-old dude in a Lions jersey in Levi's. Like, who are you flipping off, really? Like, it's like, come on. How badly do you want the cameras to take your picture at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, 24-10, they kick the field goal. And so even at this point, I'm like, you score there with a touchdown, and I'm thinking, yeah, let's go. Like
Can we please get a stop? Is where I'm
right,
thinking.
because that's why, right? It's because we can't stop them. They go 47 yards, and they go for it on 4th down and don't get it. Now this is where Dan Campbell comes into this game, because you want them to feel like the 49ers cannot stop them. But at the same time, how many NFC championship games has Dan Campbell had to call? None. This is his first time. So he has got to kind of fight this angel and devil on his shoulder. Do I go how we've been going all year long, or do I get conservative? And if I get conservative, am I going to feel like,
Am I
I left
sending the
something on
wrong
the
message
table?
to the
Yeah,
team?
everything,
But see,
right?
the
So
thing
that's
of it
coaching.
is, and that was that, and to me, I thought we dodged a bullet there, because we stopped them, so we came away with good feelings. But on that drive, for the first time in the game, even though they had been doing all kinds of really good things, that was the first time that they got 2 really, they converted 2 really long 3rd downs, and it was kind of demoralizing. And I believe if they get points there, it's like, shit, we are, it just, it's more of the same. But that was the way I felt watching in the moment, was like, that kind of was while it was on brand, it was a mistake, because it gave us it gave the defense some life. I mean, because we had finally done something. We hadn't done anything to that point. So I just felt like that gave us a little something to feel good about as a defense, which, as it turns out, was something they were able to build on. I think he could have stuck the knife in and twisted it a little more with just taking the points. But I as we talked about before, that's I'm of 2 minds on that. I kind of respect the fact that he stuck with his guns, but I don't think that he really grasped the moment and what allowing us a stop did for us, for our psyche. So it is what it is, but I'm glad he went for it. as a
Yeah.
49er
Yeah.
fan.
It's one of those games where the reason that they were kicking our butts is because of Dan Campbell. And the reason why we were able to get back into it is because of Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
So they're still down 17, but they get that big stop. Momentum is on their side a little bit. But momentum is not really what this was about, because you need good luck. This was the Curtis Blow game to me. These are the breaks, right? Like for Detroit, they didn't get any in the second half. It was all 49ers when it came to the breaks. And this one, Brock going deep, Detroit's defensive back, the ball hits him in the face. It pops up. BY has eyes on it still, makes a great catch, diving catch down at the 4-yard line. Then they score on a touchdown to BA. And now we're only down 7. But going back to that play, 8 times out of 10, that ball hits that dude's face mask and it falls. Or he
Even
catches
worse,
it.
right?
He intercepts it. And we get nothing. But in those moments, the ball bounced the 49ers way. And most of these teams that win Super Bowls, the luck and the breaks are on their side in big moments like this. And you can't just go, like in the record books, it's like, 51-yard long pass to Brandon Ayuk. But watching the game, you're like,
doesn't tell the story.
Damn, like that was a lot of luck, and that was great precision on BA for keeping his eye on that ball and staying with it, because that we needed that play. That was the real momentum changer of the whole game. So they get that touchdown, and then this is the one that if you're a Lions fan, this is the one you're kicking yourself for. Gibbs up the middle. He kind of handed the ball like directly to Gibson. Like, I don't know exactly what was going on there. It was almost like Gibson was part of the reverse, and he's like handing it to him, and Gibson just snatches it out of his hands.
What it looked like to me, based on the way his hands were, he went to the wrong side. Gibbs went. He was not where he was supposed to be. So it was weird. It's just the whole thing. The whole vibe was of the play from the beginning just looked odd. And I don't know. Where I was at watching, I couldn't hear it. But so I don't know if anybody ever confirmed that, but it just looked to me like, he went to the wrong hole or was on the wrong side of golf. So in that, like you say, that if you had to point to one from the Lions fan, if they could have that one back, because it really it changed the entire complexion of the game.
They did not play a perfect game, and in their mind, they probably thought it was going to take a near perfect game to win. And that's a mistake that you don't make that mistake. You rarely make that mistake, and they did, and the Niners capitalized on it. Again, good teams, sometimes there's luck involved. So Niners are able to they already have the ball deep in Detroit's territory. Brock is using his legs. They get a CMC touchdown, and so now we're tied. And it's still not even the fourth quarter yet, which is the most ridiculous thing, is that all of this stuff happens so quickly. So Detroit forced them on a 3-and-out, and the Niners are also lucky because it looked like they were going to be able to down it at the 1, and they just could not get that foot in. So Niners get it at the 20. They go all the way down 65 yards. Jake Moody splits the uprights. Thank you very much, Jake Moody, for kicking 2 field goals today, even though that first one kind of left us all disgusted. And then so you have a tie. You have a tie game. Or no, the Niners are up 3 starting the fourth quarter. So the Lions get the ball back, and at this point in the game, my thought was, and it's in the Discord, okay, that field goal is going to bite us in the butt, because the Lions
absolutely
are going to come right down and just get in the end zone. And they got close, but again, 4th and 3, Jared Goff gets rolled out, not what he wanted to do in that play, and throws it kind of deeper than he needed to. He and the wide receiver were not on the same page. Turnover on downs, and the Niners go and they score in less than 5 minutes. Elijah Mitchell.
Shout out to the pressure that the Niners put on him to force him out of the pocket.
And so Elijah Mitchell, of all people, scores the touchdown. I don't remember why CMC had to come out, but he came out of the game, and Elijah Mitchell. It might have been because I remember what it was. So CMC goes all the way down the right sideline, and he gets tackled, and he basically gets tackled on top of his head. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mitchell comes in, and can you believe, like,
and poaches? He comes in and poaches.
Okay, but even think about this even more. You're ice cold. You have not played one snap. And all of a sudden, the play call is, you're getting the ball. We need a touchdown. So you need to get in the end zone. Like, your job is just to switch gears. Like, your heartbeat's got to go from like resting heart rate to boom, I'm in the NFC Championship game at the goal line, and I need to punch this in. Football's crazy, man. Yeah. Like Mitchell, and Mitchell's kind of someone we were picking on all year long. Mm-hmm. This dude's not healthy, but in the moment, he's there, and he succeeds, and he's ready. And that was great.
You talk about a hero or GOAT moment. I mean, but I guess it doesn't. I mean, it's not like we lose the game if he doesn't score. But I mean, it definitely, we really had him on the run, and the fact that we were able to go ahead and punch it in right there rather than having to worry about bringing CMC back in and running another play. So like it was a good, way for him to step up and just, handle business and keep the pressure on them. So yeah, it was shout out to Elijah Mitchell.
So at that point, Niners go up 10, and that is pretty much the ball game.
Right.
And so, at that point we were finally comfortable because there's only there's only like 3 minutes left, and Detroit does score. The Niners are in that just, and the Niners are mostly playing against the clock.
It took them hella long to score. He went down with all those timeouts. They didn't call the timeouts, so it ends up like they score, but it's like only a minute left at that point where they could have had at least, it ends up not mattering, but yeah, that was that last drive of theirs kind of was weird sequencing. There was at a point, the people I was standing next to was like, why don't they just take the field goal? I mean, because either way, they're going to need to get the ball back. So why not, prioritize the time as opposed to the points? So yeah, it was just weird, but good for us, and as it turns out.
Yes. So exhausting game. I imagine they did a bonkers rating because of how close it was. And, you can kind of tell. I think this is a tell in what they think about viewership is when they constantly are recapping what happened. That tells me that they know that they have some data that new viewers have joined the podcast. And so they did that a couple times because my wife was like, we've been watching the game the whole time. We know what happened. Why do they keep recapping? I was like, they probably just heard that a bunch of people just turned their channel, their TV over to the game. So I think my main takeaway of this game is for 2 weeks in a row, the Niners have played like C+ football. Now, I think in the second half, they played A+ football. And in the first half, you could say they played F football. So that kind of averages out to like a C. I don't know the reason. I would like to hear maybe someone asked Kyle in the press conference after the game, like 2 weeks in a row, the team has come out really, really flat. And what is the reason for that? I know Trent Williams had everybody fired up today. So it can't be that people were taking Detroit too easily. That can't be the answer.
And they didn't really seem tight. I mean, I don't, it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but one of my big takeaway was last week we didn't really talk about it. I don't know why, but it was really interesting to hear Kyle, by name himself mention without prompting the fourth quarter comeback stat. Like he basically, we had never we had never done this. What we did versus the Packers is something we had never done since I've been here. And now they've done it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to hear him talk about, what his feeling is for why we put ourselves in that hole in the first place. But it does speak well of this team that two times in a row they've been able to crawl out of it in a way that we haven't been able to in the past. So
I would also like
where's Gary Plummer to take the monkey off of Kyle's back?
Yeah, exactly. I would also love to hear somebody ask him what happened to the defensive line. What are the mechanical issues with that? Like, what are they not doing? Is it just they're getting blown off the ball? Is it the offenses are sort of figuring out things that go against their pressure, and so they're they're in the wrong spot? Whatever it is, I mean, I don't know if he would even say it because you're giving away some strategy.
All right.
Because
it's interesting because when you look at like this, let's take our best player, Nick. When you look at his pass rush win rate, it's still right up there in the top 10, but it is way off his career numbers. So again, kind of like we talked about earlier about disappointment in comparison to our expectation, he has been disappointing not as a player just in general, but he's been a disappointment in comparison to his own standard that he has set.
Yeah.
That is what I'm comparing him to, is what I've seen him do before. And he's been a game wrecker, and he just hasn't been that. And it, like you say, it would be interesting. I doubt he would speak on it, but it would be interesting to be able to talk to him, privately and ask the coaches what they think the reason is. I have a hard time believing that it's the money, which is the first thing that most fans go to. It is, but I don't know what it is. I mean, is he not healthy?
Yeah, would you? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, oh yeah, in March there's like some arthroscopic cleanup that he's got to get through because of the wear and tear on a knee or whatever. I mean, he's already had that surgically repaired knee, but there is
he's had some major injuries. Like you say, he had to have the knee done. He went through that bout of with the groin thing. So it would not surprise me that he's playing through something, which would explain a lot. And because I love Nick, and we have done this show enough to where he was at Warner status. Well, he was a defensive player of the year last year. He was at Warner status, where every week you could easily make Nick the MVP of the game.
Yeah.
But he just has not been his normal dominant self this season.
Speaking of the MVP of the game, this one's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Because like you said in the beginning, I think some people can make it Brock, but you also have to discredit him for some of the poor play in the first half. I'm going to go with Debo because I think Debo just is a game changer.
Yeah,
he's the game changer of the way that they are able to give him the ball in different ways. It always seems like the defense is on their heels when he gets it. There was a play where I was sure that he was losing yardage, and he gets through that first tackle, and all of a sudden it's like 12 yards down the field.
Exactly.
There was another play where he should have got tackled for about a 4-yard loss,
and he ends up with like 3.
Yeah, and he gets like a 2-yard gain or something. So I think he just changes the you always like to use the Steph Curry thought about the gravity and CMC's gravity.
Mhm.
Debo very similarly changes the gravity of of the field, and because he attracts people, but they're also putting him in so many different spots that it's not in a predictable way. It's not like he's just going downfield and he's going to do, he's going to run a specific route, and the timing of the route with the quarterback and the wide receiver, like BA and Brock, is the reason why they can make that play. Like, Debo's not that player. Debo's moving all around the field. He's getting it
Mhm.
on a sweep. He's getting it on a screen. Then he's getting it over the middle, and he's running through guys. And so it's just different ways that the defense has to pay attention to him, similar to CMC. And the person who probably would have gotten more love, but because Debo was all over the field, is Kittle. I think he only had one catch, or maybe two. One of them was for like a loss of a yard. But
Mhm.
that's a guy who's similar in that way. But when you have Debo and CMC doing so much stuff, then yeah, Kittle's probably like the fifth, or the fifth read on some of these plays, and he's just not
But
getting it.
his willingness to settle for doing the dirty work, I mean, it's invaluable. I mean, there, at times when our offensive line was stinking, there were times when there was one play that I remember particularly where it was a big play in the run game, and our offensive lineman had nothing to do with it. It was Warner, Kittle, and Juice that made the key blocks to make the thing go. And on that one, George got a twofer. So I mean, it's that kind of thing that he brings to this team. And it's something that it's cliche to say, well, he likes to block as much as he does to make a catch, which maybe that's true, but because he does really, 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 really seem to get off on making a great block. Um, but that is a mindset. I mean, not everybody, somebody of his caliber only getting 2 targets, it's not a shock if that's a problem. Because I mean, greatest player of all time. I watched every game Jerry Rice played here. You didn't get the ball to Jerry early. It was a problem. He would
Yeah.
pout. He would start to pout, and you had to, and rightfully so. You should feed Jerry Rice. You shouldn't go 3 series without Jerry touching the ball. But it could easily be a problem like that with Kittle because he is one of the best, you know, playmakers in the league. But it's not a problem because of the way he carries it. Which is, if we end up winning a championship, I think that's a big part of it. The
Yeah,
fact that
it's his
George
unselfishness
that
is a
he
big
doesn't
part
have
of
a
it.
problem being number 4, on the pecking order, which is, as I've said many times on this pod, is absurd to think about. That George Kittle, that we have a team where there are 3 other players who get a higher priority on touches than George Kittle. That's nuts. There's no place else in the league where that would be the case. But here we are, and we're, one step away from, winning a championship, with that being the circumstance.
So who was your guy?
Um, I like Debo, but I want to give a shout out to the Draymond of our team, Dre Greenlaw, because Fred. I think Fred Warner should be Defensive Player of the Year, and he's clearly the best defensive player on our team. But there's something about the energy that Dre Greenlaw brings to this unit that is a game changer for me. The big hits, his just enthusiasm. He really, and we all know he's out there playing banged up. He's not 100%, but they I heard a quote in the pregame when they were talking about Steve Wilkes talks about how Dre Greenlaw sets the tone, and that when he tries to tackle you, he like runs through everybody, and he really is a tone setter on our defense, and every week is something. And I'm just I was glad he was down. I don't even know what happened. Because like I said, I didn't hear have the sound, but I know he was down. Kind of looked like my you know it to my eyes, it kind of looked like a stinger or something. But he came back and he was just really really. I thought he was a key to us, turning it around and he's just
Throwing
a
his
different.
helmet. I was waiting for somebody to throw their damn helmet, man. I wish I
Exactly.
had a helmet that I could have thrown.
Exactly. Exactly. Me too.
All right. One thing that we're doing this week on the channel, we have 3 shows this week. This is the first. Is I had an idea because I'm rewatching this. Actually, watching it for the first time. It's just taking me forever. The Joe Montana Peacock documentary,
Hmm.
and because we're in the playoffs, and I just want to remember a lot of the 49ers stuff. I also bought the book, a rivalries book about Joe and Steve, going through that whole thing all over again. And again, this is why I'm thinking about Joe and Steve and
I'm gonna have to check that out because I didn't even know that existed,
yeah,
and I want to.
it's pretty good. It's good reporting. He's not rewriting, things, and there's no like brand new information. He's just doing a good job of knowing what the stories were because the reporting was excellent back then. That's like the
Hmm.
biggest story in the Bay Area. And there was some stuff in there that I didn't know though. Like I didn't know that Bill Walsh and his wife, at some point in the mid '80s, had kind of taken a break, and Bill was dating like a playmate from the '70s. Like this is in this book, and it was in Bill's biography. I forget the writer who wrote Bill's biography, but I was like, man, I never heard that. I don't remember that. It was crazy. I'm like looking her up on Google photos, having to keep the safety search on. I'm like, I don't want my browser to be all those Playboy photos, Bill Walsh pulling up, naked photos on my phone. But so like there's stuff like that, but yeah, so I'm back in this time frame of the 80s and 90s 49ers. And so I thought this would be a good kind of topic, and for the people who are listening and watching, if you could relive one season through the eyes of a particular player, who would that be? And the caveat is you gotta deal with these wins and losses all over again, right? We know how heartbreaking 2012 was when we can't hit that fade to Crabtree. We know how heartbreaking 2019 is when Kansas City just runs away with it, and we missed the long bomb that could have put the game away. So if you pick a season, you have to also take how that season turned out. And so I didn't give you much heads up. I only gave you probably 20 minutes of heads up that I wanted to do this. So I can actually go first and give you a few more minutes to think about it. And also
Hmm.
folks in the chat, let me know. But what I am going with is I thought about 84 Joe Montana. The problem with 84 Joe Montana, and that, arguably the Niners' best team, I don't get to watch Jerry if it's 84 Joe Montana, because Jerry doesn't get
Exactly.
drafted until the next year. So I was looking at, okay, what are some of Jerry's best years? And 87 was like the strike season, but then they get upset in the divisional playoffs against the Vikings, and I think Anthony Carter, the wide receiver, and Wade Wilson, the Vikings quarter. I don't
Hmm.
want to live through that again. That season was so bad that my next door neighbor, who was a Dallas Cowboy fan and whose family I love dearly, they're great people. He really made my dad angry because in silver spray paint, he wrote in the middle of the street, "Sorry 49ers."
Hmm.
So mean to us. Because he was a Dallas fan, and Dallas was not doing very good until a few years later. So, but like that season, it just, no matter how good we 13-2 in the regular season, Montana and Rice were having like crazy seasons, but then they lost, and I don't want to go through that again. So I decided it was the George Seifert. So I lose Bill, but it's the first George Seifert year where the Niners boat race the Broncos 55-10. I can pick Montana or I can pick Rice. I'm picking Joe, even though Jerry is my favorite player, because in my mind, that season was about redemption and kind of closing the door a little bit on Joe Montana as a 49er. He doesn't play very much in 91 and he's gone in 92. So yeah, it's a nice little bookend to close the door on Joe. So you get to see Joe have a great season. It's Jerry. Roger is still playing, Ronnie Lott, Chet Brooks. So you get to relive that season. They go 14-2. Joe's the MVP. Jerry is the MVP of the Super Bowl, and you are good to go. So that is the season that I choose to relive. If I was to be able to relive that whole season of games, that is the one that I want for the 49ers.
I would go with 89. We talk about how that's so I guess the 88 season, not
Little
with
bit of a struggle midway through that
yeah,
season too.
10-6. I mean, it really was a struggle. That I just that Super Bowl is just iconic to me.
You get that game, which was at that point probably, even though the game, 3/4 of that game was kind of boring, but the best Super Bowl up to that point.
Joe Montana at the peak of his powers. Like you say, it wasn't like a necessarily great game, but just the drive is where it's at. And it's a quirky game because Joe does what he does, but then John Taylor makes the big catch, but Jerry is the MVP. It was just like a super weird game. And then what I always remember randomly is the riots afterwards in Miami. It was just such a bizarre time, and it was like the end of Ronnie, and that was his like kind of swan song. And then that it got really weird for me as a fan, when we treat what I felt, and now that with player empowerment and everything, you know I felt even at the time that we treated Ronnie Lott very, very disrespectfully. And
The 49ers, I think it was after that Super Bowl season the following year, they put Ronnie and Roger Craig on what was called Plan B free agency.
yep,
I don't exactly remember the particulars of Plan B, but what I remember is like you could expose them and then another team could sign them because they
right.
both went to the Raiders.
Yep. And that was the thing, because famously in his books and in all the, reporting, it was Bill Walsh's famous words that, he'd rather lose a player a year too early than a year too late. And then subsequently, that was what the case was. Ronnie Lott went to the Raiders and was an all pro. It was an all pro still. And I just, even then, I felt that you pay those dudes. He had done right up there with Joe and Jerry. Ronnie on the defensive line, he was the guy that set the tone for those dynasties, and for the thought of him being anywhere else was ridiculous. And then for it to be the Raiders was like insult to injury
Yeah.
for young Rod. But that would be the team, because again, it's
Would
always
you relive that season through Ronnie? Is that the guy you're focusing on? Is it Joe? Is it
yeah,
Jerry?
it's probably for me, it would probably be through the eyes of Jerry, because I feel like that was like Jerry in like at the peak of his powers. I mean, he was just he is for me the greatest football player to ever put on
Yeah,
cleats.
me too.
And that, when I think of Jerry Rice, it's the plays that he made in that season, like the minor miracle in with the Giants.
Yeah.
That was one that was that means so much to me because it was. I was thinking about this week. Is like I was talking to somebody about, and I didn't miss any. I watched all of Alex Smith's games as a Niner because by that point I was grown, but I missed so many games because my mom would make me go to church, and
Yeah.
I couldn't. And I remember listening to that game in the car at a Denny's after church. I asked to be excused so I could go out and watch. And my mother, I remember her saying as I left the table, they're gonna lose anyway. I don't know why you tripping. And I was like, see, it's kind of fucking fan you are, lady. And he makes that play, and then so my first memories of that play were the two dudes. If you guys don't know, he like runs a play, and the two Giants wide defensive backs like rub each other
Yeah.
off, and Jerry scores. So I first heard that play before I actually saw the play,
Yeah.
and I went fucking crazy in the car. We won this game. So Jerry has always been my guy, but that season was like really special to me. So yeah, I'd want to relive it through Jerry's eyes. Like you say, it wasn't all pretty.
There's some tough ones.
It wasn't like a 14-2 season.
Yeah.
It was, we took some tough losses, but that it's kind of, those are like the good ones, kind of like what the if we end up going and we're fortunate enough to win this championship, it hasn't been all peaches and creams, and I think that will make it that much sweeter if we're able to pull it off.
Though, the thing about this is usually the Super Bowl is about the quarterbacks. It's about like, and on one side you got like the QB1 of all QB1s in the NFL this year, and then you got Brock, the underdog, and so that's going to be the story for these next 2 weeks.
But I think it's going to be. I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, if you knew nothing about football, and you're like, oh, Pat Mahomes, yeah, I've heard of him. Brock Purdy, like, people kind of dismiss him. Like, of course the Chiefs are going to win. I think the 49ers are actually a 1.5 point favorite right now, though. That could get to pick them, I think. I think people are going to put the money on Mahomes just because he's done it and he's been there. It'd be like putting the money on Brady, right? You're like, oh, Brady usually finds a way to do it. That's what Mahomes is right now. He usually finds a way to do it. So,
but I thought I knew where you're going, but I think this is going to come down to the defenses. The defenses are going to win this game. Whoever is able to get it figured out defensively, I think fastest and best will do it. Can we figure out a way to, we're going to have to shore up our run defense, because if we play run defense like we did today, Isaiah Pacheco is going to run all up and down the field on us. And also we've got to be able to put pressure on Mahomes. And conversely, are they going to be able to confuse, let's be real blunt, are they going to be able to confuse Kyle the way that they were able to confuse Todd Monken today, and have him questioning in his play calls? I have never seen that with anybody able be able to have Kyle questioning his judgment and his play calls. So it's going to be, I think this is going to be fascinating. And I think you're right. I think Pick'em is right. I think that's where the number should land. I don't really see how you can make a solid case for either of these teams.
I think that these last two games, if you were hot on the Niners coming into the playoffs, you're probably a little cooler on them. And conversely, the Chiefs have their worst regular season in quite a long time, and yet the two guys, the Reed and Mahomes, partnership, that you just kind of bet on them. So we're gonna have our work cut out for us. But before we get out of here, I did want to ask you, because you're talking about Jerry. What do you think about Jerry? Jerry, I think he allows himself to become this, but he's kind of like the Flavor Flav of the 49ers right now. He's got the big chain. He's the biggest fan. He's out there taking pictures. I actually like that about him because, you look at other historic players in franchises like Barry Bonds. I'm sure is a little bit more outgoing now than he was. Joe Montana, he will be at the stadium, but Jerry's not only there, Jerry is with the people. Jerry's
Mhm.
out there with the crowd. He's like hugging people and taking pictures and showing off the chain, and he's running routes. And like he is wearing that 49ers on his chest in these games. But in some things, I would kind of wonder, like, you're almost too regal to be with the people like that sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking is that um it I don't I don't want it to sound judgy, but it's like that's kind of beneath him
Yeah.
because and I guess that has more to do with the status that I hold him at because like I said, I think no disrespect to Jim Brown and Lawrence Taylor or Joe Montana or any of those Mount Rushmore,
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Mount Rushmore level guys, but I think Jerry Rice is better than all of them. None of them were as dominant as he was
Yeah.
for such a long. Because I mean, and Jerry had I don't got to tell you, but it was like he had two careers. He had that career where he was the best football player we've ever seen, and then he had the career where he played at a high level for longer than anybody we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Jerry Rice in Seattle was still he wasn't nowhere near peak Jerry Rice, but he was still freaking good.
He he
With,
he he would be our slot receiver on this team.
yeah, legitimately at 40. He was really good toward Jerry Rice never got sorry.
Yeah.
It's kind of he's kind of like LeBron now. It's different. And like LeBron is not what he was at peak LeBron, but he's freaking as old as he is, and he's still
Still
top
hurting my
12 in the
feelings.
league. He's still a legitimately one of the best players in the league. And that was what Jerry was. So I hold him as such, I think he should be on a
Yeah.
literal pedestal
Yeah. Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
But like you say, it is kind of cool too that you can, as a fan, you can really just like literally reach out and touch Jerry, and
Yeah.
he's doing things with his
Goat
with
fuel
his
and
goat fuel, and he's at a Costco near you where you can just kind of go shake the goat's hand,
yeah.
literally. So I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. So for the rest of this week, Thompson and Clark Monday, we're gonna do our relive a season there too, because not a lot of stuff is happening in Giants baseball land right now. Um, and then I'm still trying to figure it out as far as the death lineup tonight. I gotta watch that Warriors Lakers game that was nuts. That unfortunately the Warriors lost. That went to double OT, but I gotta watch that tonight because I wasn't able to watch it last night. And so I'm hoping that Ben Cruz will join me on the death lineup. My oldest, Brian, he's in London right now. He was sending me pictures from
Oh,
the Ted Lasso bar from the pub that they always go to in Ted Lasso. He was just doing a little bit of sightseeing, and I think there was the Ravens game, the Ravens and the Chiefs game was going on while he was there. So he's hanging out in London. He's going to be gone for a couple weeks. So hopefully I can get Ben Cruz to join me on the death lineup. But
I
we will
can't
do.
wait for the death lineup because I've got questions about. I want to hear what rational people have to say about this team because I'm kind of depressed right
That's
now.
why I
And
want to watch this Lakers game
yeah,
because I watched the Kings game. They were within distance to where I didn't give up in that Kings game for the whole time, but the end of that game made me sad. And I figured we're going to lose that Laker game because they were running out of steam. There are some things that I like about that team, but
Yes,
ultimately they cannot get stops, and I am not sure what
that's
happened.
that's where I was. It was like, look at the beginning of that Kings game. It's like they're gonna score 200 points.
Yes.
They can't stop anybody. But then, they figured it out, and there's a few of those last sequences were kind of disappointing. But
You know what? You know what though? They should lose a game where Harry B gives you 37. If
yeah,
Harry B gives you 37, you kind of deserve to lose that game.
how the hell did Harrison Barnes have 2 30-point games back to back? I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to I'll be looking forward to that alert on the death
All
line.
right. All right.
Because
Yeah. We're Ben and I are I think we're probably a little closer to our wits' end with this team than we've been for a very long time. They got to make a move. That's just the bottom line. They got to make a move, and they haven't done it yet. So
But
when
they're
they
not
make a
gonna
move,
but they're not moving any of the big three, are they? I just don't.
I don't think so, and
I
I don't
can't
think
see
they could
that.
really move Clay, even
Yeah.
if they wanted to. Which
It's a
is
tough. It's kind of sad to watch my man Clay, because
yeah,
I'm not here for no Clay slander, but it's not good right now. It's
no,
not very.
no,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. It's kind of it's a little sad. He is at like this weird point of his career, and it's injury based, right? Like
Mhm.
unfortunately, like maybe he gets to where he is now eventually with old age, but you tear your knee and your Achilles tendon within 10 months of each other.
Yeah,
It's tough
that's a
sledding.
problem.
All
And
right,
I
so
mean, he can still shoot, but yeah,
yeah,
okay, yeah,
absolutely. He
we
can
won't.
absolutely still shoot.
Yeah.
So we'll be back, and then so you and I, we probably got to do a show next weekend. We'll sort of make that TBA. We do a little bit of preview, Super Bowl preview, and maybe even do one a little closer to Sunday as well to kind of get all the latest news and all the latest nuggets and some props that you may be interested in and
Yeah,
stuff
because
like
I'm
that.
gonna be there Super Bowl week, so yeah, definitely
So we'll
we can do
probably do
that.
2 more shows before the big game, the recap Super Bowl evening, where we finish off this season. So lots of stuff coming on. Thank you to everybody for staying with us. To those of you listening on the podcast feed, appreciate it. And so for Rod, I am Double G. The Niners are going to the Super Bowl, baby. Peace out.